we're going to start off with the Chiefs dominating win over the 49ers on Sunday, where we saw the Chiefs win that one 44-23.
Yeah, this was a huge game. It started off really close. It was a hard, tough battle, and then the Chiefs pulled ahead and just never looked back. Niners went out pretty sad by the end of it. So Patrick Mahomes goes 25 for 34, 423 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. What we talked about last week was his bad turnover tendencies. Finally, this is normal when he has a game. There's only one pick, 0 to 1 picks or turnovers in general. They look really good. They look really good in this game. When he had that pick, it was early. The Chiefs looked rough early. So you can see it right there. Isaiah Pacheco leads in rushing with 43 yards, but it was Clyde Edwards-Helaire who got 32 yards and the rushing touchdown, or a rushing touchdown for them. Mecole Hardman, the wide receiver, got 28 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns on 2 carries. So it's a little bit of trickery, I guess you can call it. Hardman was also productive in the air, getting a touchdown on 32 yards. So pretty productive day overall for him. Justin Watson was able to get a 1-yard touchdown, but it was Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdes-Scantling who really went crazy for the Chiefs in the receiver position, or in the air at the very least. Juju gets 127 yards and a touchdown on just 7 receptions, pretty good. And then MVS was able to grab 111 yards, so huge day for that offense. And then Juan Thornhill and Josh Williams both picked off Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. Purdy came in to relieve Garoppolo later in the game, probably because they were getting blown up. Chad Henne also came in to relieve Patrick Mahomes at one point, but he did a whole lot of nothing. He went 0 for 2 on passes and ran 3 times for -3 yards. So, but they did what they needed to do. And also Harrison Butker comes back. We talked about it last week when we said that's not a guy who you're going to have to miss a lot. He did miss a field goal last week. He misses only attempt this week. So coming back from injury hasn't looked like the Harrison Butker we're used to. Jimmy G went 25 for 37, 303 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Pretty good ratio, honestly. It just wasn't enough once the Chiefs started pulling away. Brock Purdy, the relief quarterback, did do a little more than Chad Henne did. He came in, went 4 for 9, 66 yards. Unfortunately, he also went 0 for 1 TD int. So not a great day for Brock Purdy at the office. Jeff Wilson outpaced CMC in rushing with 54 yards. CMC had 38, and he had 1 more carry. Wilson had 7 carries. CMC had 8. There were no touchdowns on the ground for the Niners. George Kittle celebrates National Tight End Day with 6 receptions, 98 yards, and a touchdown. Travis Kelce actually had the exact same stat line without the touchdown. Pretty crazy. Ray McLeod was able to get 65 yards and a TD. And then finally, from our stat section here, Talanoa Hufanga was able to pick off Patrick Mahomes early in the game, give the Niners a good scoring opportunity. He's looked really, really good as a defender. Of course, people are going to compare him to Troy Polamalu. He plays very similar. He's a great defensive player, and I can't wait to see what Talanoa is able to do in this league from here on out. Unfortunately, wasn't able to do enough against the Chiefs.
Yeah, so I think what we probably ought to do just before we get too into the game is just address the elephant in the room here with the Christian McCaffrey trade, because we weren't able to react to it earlier in the week when it happened last Thursday during the game, I'm pretty sure. So, of course, Christian McCaffrey, all-pro for the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, rough past couple of years with the injuries, but the 2 years that he was the full-time starter was amazing. Had the 1,000 season. And there was a lot of talk in the offseason, about possibly trading him because of the contract, because of the injuries, but it didn't happen. But with the Panthers start this year, they start off horribly, 1-5, and they said, you know what, let's just go ahead and ship off McCaffrey. So they give him to the Niners. They get a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th picks, 5th round picks back in to their draft stock for the next year and the year after that. So how I feel about it as a Panther fan, I'll go ahead and ask you the same thing. But how I feel about it is like, I understand why they did it. It's frustrating to see initially. And with all the reports of them saying, oh, we want like 2 first-round picks for him, otherwise we're not going to trade him. That obviously wasn't true, or it wasn't accurate enough, because they didn't get a single first-round pick, which is understandable considering his injury history. But having watched every game that this guy had played for the most part, it was kind of annoying that we didn't really get more, but we did get a lot of picks though. So, I mean, we got a pick in each of the top 5 rounds, save for the first round. So as a Panther fan, I understand it. It's just a little frustrating having to trade away our best player, but I will ask you, like, what was your reaction to it?
Yeah, I think overall, I am not the most pleased because of what we got back from him. I would have loved to have gotten a first, probably because we were told we would be getting a first or multiple first. But overall, I think we did get a decent package for him when you consider the injury history, how much he's actually been able to play. He's a great player. I think we definitely could have gotten a little more if we wanted to. But I do think maybe it'll work. I think you can even look at it in the Bucks game that we played right afterwards. We have a little more offensive diversity every now and then when he's not on the field. There's not as much pressure to feed CMC. So while I do think he was the best player on our team, maybe without him they can figure out something going forward. They can build around that hole and not just focus on one guy. Not the most pleased with the trade, of course, but I think it's not the worst thing to happen. I think we can recover for it, and we did play well right afterwards. So
Yeah, and what sort of surprised me, but knowing what kind of guy Christian is, what didn't surprise me as much was the fact that he was willing to play immediately. I mean, he got traded Thursday night and he gets there Friday and it's like, all right, boom, walk through Saturday, play Sunday afternoon at, well, 1 o'clock over there on the West Coast. So, I mean, he wasted no time. He didn't play that many snaps, which is pretty obvious that wasn't going to happen. He wasn't going to be playing, the entire game, but he did get a decent bit of snaps early on. And just getting into the game now, we said this about the Bills game. That first drive against that Chiefs defense, it looked like the Chiefs defense just was non-existent. And I'm just watching like, all right, this is going to be sort of a repeat, but except the Bills are actually, unlike the Bills, I should say, the 49ers are actually going to continue with that offensive onslaught, which they pretty much did. I mean, at least in their first couple drives, they got 2 field goals and a touchdown off of an interception by Patrick Mahomes, which is again one of those interceptions from him that's just like, come on. But that was his only turnover of the day, of course, so that did help out. But it did look like that 49er offense from the beginning was like, all right, they're just going to be driving. And it's going to be up to the Chiefs defense at some point to get a stop because I'm not really worried about the Chiefs offense. And as the weeks have gone by, that receiving core has kind of gelled a lot more with MVS, Juju, Sky Moore, as well as some other guys. So they're starting to gel a little bit more. I wouldn't really worry about the offense, just the defense being able to stop the Niners with Christian McCaffrey, even though he's not going to play a whole lot of snaps. With him being in there, he's going to be an X factor, and you still got a top tier tight end, a top tier receiver with Debo Samuel, and a pretty good running game. So that was really going to be a test for them. And early on, it wasn't really there. Then you get later into the half, the 49ers, they get down. They're in field goal range. They end up having to get out of field goal range because of penalty, and then they punt. Fortunately, I think it was Sky Moore was on punt returns. He muffed it. So the 49ers literally get amazing field position right out of that. And then Jimmy G does what Jimmy G does, and he throws an interception, which led to that missed field goal by Harrison Butker. But I think that was pretty much the turning point of the game because at that point, even though it was close coming out of the second half, coming out of the second quarter into the second half, it just wasn't really the same game at that point. At least in the first, it was close the entire time. Once they got later into it, Chiefs defense started to bear down, and the offense just continued to be great.
yeah, I mean the Chiefs really just once that defense kicked in, I think that's when the game shifted, right? Because the game was going, it was a good back and forth. We saw these two teams meet before at similar strengths. Niners are probably a little better now in the Super Bowl, and honestly, a similar thing happened. Only in that case, the comeback win. The Chiefs really didn't pull off a comeback. I wouldn't say it was a pretty close back and forth, and then they put the defensive pressure on, they get the gas going on offense, pulled away from this game, and took it pretty commandingly. I think looking at this game, I'd say the Niners are still they look like a good team. This was a good performance. I'm rocky on them this season, but I think they gave me a little hope, regardless of how they fell apart in the second half. I think they were pretty good in the first half. Now they do have to keep the pressure on. You can't play a football game for only one half, or at least defensively. I think offensively they never really fall off. Right? They score at least a little bit in each quarter. They get a touchdown in each half, a few field goals. The problem is defensively for this to be one of the top defenses in this league, or at least touted as such. You can't allow as many points as they did in the second half. I mean, in the third quarter, 14, in the fourth quarter, 16. That's just you can't do that. It's unacceptable, especially when the team already has 14 from the first half. It's 14-13. The game's really controllable. You can keep it close. Your offense keeps a decent pace, right? You finish with 13 in the first half. You finish with 23 overall. That's not bad. But the Chiefs finished with 14 in the first half, finished with 44 overall. So it comes down on the Niners defense to me. That definitely the offense probably could have done a little more. But honestly, when I look at how they play, there's not much that I'm upset about with what the Niners did on offense. The defense just really needed to give them a little more breathing room. Once you get so far down, there's about so much the offense can do. And Jimmy G actually played a really good game. There's always going to be Jimmy G slander. I think he did pretty well. Can't be too mad at him for this one. There's plenty of games in the past where I could have been like, yeah, this is on Jimmy's shoulders, but I think he did what he could. Definitely had some mistakes he could have cleaned up. Threw a pick, of course, so you never want to do that one. But that pick was also ugly. That was close to the end zone, and I don't know if he was trying to really get it to George Kittle. And I that's what the announcer said, at least. But looking at that play, I really couldn't figure out how he thought Kittle was going to be catching that one. So turnovers like that are definitely going to hurt. But overall, I would say this one really has to come primarily on the Niners defense. I won't say solely, but defense really has to be hurting about this one. The offense did what they needed to do. For the most part, defense just folded and allowed 30 in one half, and that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much a matchup of strengths there with the Chiefs offense and then the 49ers defense there. I think coming into the game, they showed at the start it was like 1-2-1 or 1-2-2 something defensive rankings for the 49ers. So we were expecting, I mean, obviously you can't keep the Chiefs down, but for so long. But considering how good they were, at least through the first 6 games of the season, you would think that they wouldn't be getting killed the way they were. I mean, the touchdown to Juju, I mean, they just got murdered, and they had another long play to Juju. And McCole Hardman was running all over the place. I mean, once it got to the second half, I mean, it was rough. And in the first half, going back to it, all those times that they were down in the red zone or down, inside of 30 or so of the Chiefs, they could have gotten a touchdown that first drive. The third drive, they drove down. They could have gotten a touchdown rather than the field goal. Then the drive where, again, they had to punt and then got it right there, and Jimmy G threw that pick. I mean, that's multiple missed opportunities where you can't really trade field goals for touchdowns against the Chiefs. It's just not going to work. So your defense can only hold them up for so long. If you're trading field goals for touchdowns, as you can see, it's tied, it's close to being tied 14-13 after 2 quarters. But then once the Chiefs come out, they score touchdown. And you're only scoring a touchdown here, field goal here. Then they get a safety. The Chiefs do on defense. I mean, and then they fumble the next drive. At that point, it's over. So, I mean, you just cannot make those kind of mistakes. And this is something we talked about last week. In games with the Chiefs versus the Bills, we're saying with the Chiefs, they can't make any mistakes like those Mahomes picks. So, it's the same thing for the 49ers. Despite how good their defense is supposed to be, you cannot make those kind of mistakes and expect to be able to win. I didn't think it was going to get that out of hand, but once it got to that, second long touchdown, I mean, it was just like, all right, it's pretty much over with, and it just got out of hand from there.